The lax laws also help significantly, as you've heard Jeanine Pirro say, who's the new attorney for D.C. under the Trump administration. I can't prosecute 13, 14, 15-year-olds. If they carjack a car, I can't touch them. They give them a slap on the wrists and tell them to go to yoga classes or do some kind of therapeutic remediation at home.
Welcome to Straight to the Point. I'm your host, Representative Joe D'Orsi. In a world of long-windedness, I'm here to deliver you the Capitol News in 10 minutes or less. So, let's get straight to the point. So, welcome to the Straight to the Point podcast. I'm Representative Joe D'Orsi, and I am joined from afar today from Florida. She is a former Florida congressional candidate and Newsmax, Fox News, and News Nation political and legal analyst. She is Amanda Makki. Amanda, thanks for joining the show.
It's great to be with you, Joe.
So redistricting is a popular topic nationwide. It's acute in the Lone Star State. I actually had Hillary Hicklund of House District 55 in Texas on the show recently. Some people call it gerrymandering. Redistricting is possibly the more popular term. What are you hearing from the ground in Texas with this redistricting effort and the blowback that we're hearing from the legacy media in response?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously today's kind of an important day because it made the headlines that the legislators are all coming back. So their efforts were futile. Sure, they got a lot of media attention, and I think that the fact that the governor said he would stop their paychecks, they weren't going to be electronically deposited into their account, was really the catalyst for them to come back to work. So, if you want to stand on a platform and stand on your philosophy and you want to stand on principle, you don't go to a state that is the most gerrymandered state in the nation, Illinois. You don't run to a state where you're trying to make the point that the state that you're running from, where your job is, where you're supposed to be to represent your constituents, is doing unarguably the same thing. So it was really the hypocrisy that I think did them in. I think that really hurt them because even when I was on with Democrat strategists on the various shows that you referenced, they would say the same thing. It's like, this is kind of a bad look for Democrats that they're running to Illinois of all places, or New York State for that matter, where the districts have been gerrymandered so bad. In fact, Governor Pritzker of Illinois was on one of the late night shows, I think it was with Stephen Colbert, and Stephen Colbert actually pointed out, to his credit, look at this gerrymandering in your state. And the governor responded, yeah, looks like a kindergartner did our redistricting maps. So the hypocrisy is thick. And I think that's why these Texas legislators came back to do their job. And now they're going to have a quorum, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the word hypocrisy. Certainly with the Illinois maps, you look at some of these oblong shapes that are clearly drawn to benefit one party over the other. In Pennsylvania, just a couple of years ago when we did our redistricting effort, it was drastically in favor of the Democrat Party.
That's what legislators, when they're in control, do. But the bigger point here is, and I think California is the best example, where you had 40% of Californians vote for President Trump, yet they only hold 17% of the seats in the legislature. So you have, a disproportionate number of Democrats that get to control everything. And to your point, that's why these maps look the way that they do, because that's what the Democrats have done. They've completely carved the Republicans out. There are a series of states, starting from Maine and going down to the Mid-Atlantic, probably about 10 states that don't have a single Republican represented in their legislature. And that's what's really important, is that now we're having this conversation, and hopefully your kids in school are learning about this and learning about the redistricting process.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, Trump won our state by a solid 2 percentage points, and because of those bulletproof maps that favored Democrats, we stayed at a 102 to 101 Democrat majority in the House. You would think that kind of showing at the voting booth would translate into a couple of flipped seats, and it didn't, which is a testament to how well Democrats gerrymandered Pennsylvania. So I think it's rich to hear this from the legacy media. And talking with Hillary from Texas, she kind of explained that more so than in Illinois or Pennsylvania, in their redistricting efforts in Texas, they're more closely following the Constitution, natural boundary lines, keeping counties intact. That's actually how it's supposed to work, is it not?
It is. And, of course, all of this ends up in typically in the judicial body at some point because, the progressive base and the progressive groups will come out and sue for this. And so it has to go before the courts. You can't just do this the way that you want to. You have to follow these guidelines. And so to your point, if and when this does go to a judge or before a judicial body, however they do it in Texas, that's something that's going to be asked about. And so they have to follow guidelines. Unfortunately, in a lot of states where the legislature, kind of all three chambers are controlled by Democrats, they allow this to fly, which is why we see what we see in states in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast and New England.
Yeah, so you have a nice national panoramic view of some of the issues that are facing all Americans, certainly Pennsylvanians as well. Crime and law and order is a topic that you've focused on. You were on Newsmax recently talking about the issue in D.C. Because you're so familiar with D.C., what's going on there? Is law and order and crime really a top issue for Americans? And what do Washingtonians feel on the ground about their public safety?
Yeah, so I'm a native Washingtonian. I grew up just outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland, but I lived in Washington, D.C. I worked on Capitol Hill for a decade. I worked in the Pentagon, and so I was in and out of D.C. a lot. I also worked for a Pittsburgh-based law firm. I was a partner at K&L Gates, and so my offices were right by the White House. And I remember I would leave work late at night, whether it was the Capitol or at the law firm, and I would walk for what would be considered miles in D.C., which is a very long walk, over an hour back to my house. And I never worried. I'd be on my phone. It would be busy, crowded streets, people out enjoying the town. Now, that was pre-COVID. After COVID, everything changed in that city to the point that President Biden did not have government employees back to work. So imagine a city that is the capital of our nation, that is almost entirely run by the government or serviced by government employees or outside groups that service the government. That town was shut down. You barely saw people in the streets. And that's what made crime go up, was that these people who had ill intentions, that were criminals, would go into stores, rob the stores. The lax laws also helped significantly, as you've heard Jeanine Pirro say, who's the new attorney for D.C. under the Trump administration. I can't prosecute 13, 14, 15-year-olds. If they carjack a car, I can't touch them. They give them a slap on the wrists and tell them to go to yoga classes or do some kind of therapeutic remediation at home. So the parents know that, and they put their kids out there to do the violent crime. And so you've created a town that's not a very large town, or 10 by 10 by 10, and all of a sudden you have crime that is rampant. No one wants to go on the metro, use public transportation. People are afraid to be outside. And these are not just people that go to work in D.C. and go back to their sprawling suburban homes. These are people who are lifelong D.C. residents who are saying, thank President Trump for making this a safer town. We don't want to be scared to go outside of our homes. And D.C. has changed drastically in the last 5 years. I can tell you that personally, as someone, as I said, who would walk miles and miles from work to home. I won't even get out of my Uber without running into my house and making the Uber wait for me to just make sure I get into my house, because it is that dangerous right now in D.C., on Capitol Hill and those areas. We had an intern, as many people heard, an intern, 19 years old, was murdered last month in D.C. for no reason, congressional intern. And you had a congressman from Texas who was held up and I think he was robbed. That was a few months back. So this is a town that has changed dramatically, and thank God for President Trump making these changes and bringing in the federal presence. And one thing I did say on Newsmax was look to see where these criminals go, because they're gonna get out of harm's way for them, and they're gonna go to states like Maryland where the laws are liberal and relaxed.
Yeah, so how does public safety and crime, law and order shape up in the rankings of issues? I know I can speak to Philadelphia with their liberal DA Larry Krasner. He doesn't prosecute violent criminals. He doesn't prosecute anybody except for Little Sisters of the Poor, apparently.
Right.
And that's an issue in southeastern Pennsylvania. But nationwide, where does that rank with people when they prepare to go to the voting booth?
So someone said this on CNN, and I think she made a really great point. She said, the facts don't care about your, feelings don't care about your facts. So how people feel, you can't throw statistics in their face and say, no, the crime is really going down in Washington, D.C. or Philly or Pittsburgh or whatever city. You can't tell people that crime is going down when they have two eyes to be able to see with their own eyes what's happening right before them, what's happening to their neighbors, what's happening to cars in their community being carjacked, stolen, whatever it might be, vandalized. So back to my point, I think that it is the most important issue, maybe the single most important issue right now, because of what we're seeing in urban areas throughout America, whether it's Philly, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., large cities in America that are run by Democrats exclusively. The last city that was a large city not run by a Democrat was Jacksonville, Florida, and it's now run by a Democrat. So every major city in America is run by a Democrat, and they all have the worst crime statistics. Yeah. And so people have insecurities about that. So I would rate this as maybe the top issue, and one of the issues that probably propelled President Trump to the White House.
Yeah. So another issue in Pennsylvania that's amazingly has come to the forefront is women's sports. Certainly you have the Trump administration adjusting the Title IX statute, and rightly so. It's the right move. It's actually the original intent of the statute. And we have Senate Bill 9, the Save Women's Sports Act in Pennsylvania. Governor Shapiro came out in opposition to that. He called people like me extreme for advocating for girls and women in their sports. Did you ever dream that this would be an issue? And how do you see it affecting any future elections and the makeup of even the Pennsylvania legislature?
I would highly encourage him to continue saying that this is such an out there issue, and you, Joe Diorsey, are such a far-right member of the legislative body in Pennsylvania, because that's a losing issue. And they know it, and they keep digging their heels on this issue, which I just can't understand. Is it that they're afraid of the repercussions from the progressive base of their party, or is it that they're just this stupid? Now, of course, as you and I both know, Governor Shapiro has higher ambitions. He would like to run for president, and it's a good thing that he didn't choose to go with Kamala, because that was obviously not only a losing ticket, but an embarrassing one. So I think he has set his sights high on the presidency, and he thinks that this is an important issue if he's in a primary. But I think deep down inside, he knows this is a losing issue. It is absolutely the wrong path to take. And I'm so proud that in Florida, Governor DeSantis eliminated all of that early on. He might have been the leader on this issue. As far as states go, where he said, we're taking this woke BS out of our schools, out of our curriculum, out of our sports. If you're a girl, you're going to compete with other girls. You're not going to be forced to compete with a biological male.
There's a lightning round question here, Amanda. There's a real stark contrast between leadership like you have in Florida and say Pennsylvania, Illinois, California, name the state. They've gotten a tremendous amount done in Florida. Governor DeSantis has waged a war on this type of issue that we're talking about, also DEI being embedded in education. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he's grown in popularity because of it. What's the story from the ground in Florida with what he's done?
Well, this is his second term. We are a two-term state, so he is term limited. And you know how it goes in the second term, you become more of a, I hate to call him a lame duck, but that's kind of the political verbiage that's used, where people are like, all right, he's sunsetting. But what Governor DeSantis did, no one can take away from him. I mean, he turned the state into a ruby red conservative state. So when, you and I were growing up, Joe, it was never that this state was solid Republican. It was always one of those purple states, battleground states. And of course, in 2000, President Bush won by just over 500 votes because of this state. It was that close. But what Governor DeSantis has done is turned the state super conservative. And that's why you've really eliminated people wanting to even move here or think of moving here because they're like, oh, I don't like their politics. Better that you don't come, because we don't want your politics here either. So he's really created this bastion of conservatism. And I was just in Poland last month, and I remember thinking this is such a conservative country. And it reminds me of how Florida has just become super conservative, where we feel protected, we feel safe, but also all the issues like you mentioned with Title IX, with all the other woke ideology that has come about since the Obama administration. We are protected here, and other states should follow suit of what Governor DeSantis did. So I would say his policies are extremely popular, but everyone realizes that, we're going to have new leadership, but he's trailblazed this state. He really has made this state a better, more conservative place.
Yeah, and I know we've lost a lot of people. Our domestic net migration is top 5 or 10 in the country. We've lost a lot of people to Tennessee, Texas, and definitely Florida. So it is a bastion that you speak of. She is Amanda Makki. She's a former Florida congressional candidate and political and legal analyst for Newsmax, Fox News, and News Nation. Amanda, thanks for joining.
Thanks, Joe.
This has been Straight to the Point. Visit repjod.com/mypodcasts.